Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and since y'all seem to like the AoE spell tier list, I am back with the first of a 7-part series where I make a tier list for all of the, I guess, relevant spells for each of the 7 schools. So, we're going to be starting off with Fire, naturally, and yeah, we've got just a basic tier list that I found. I also added some of the other spells that weren't here. I've added a couple utility spells, but most of this is just the damage spells, hence like the whole relevant type deal. So that is what we are doing today. So let's get started. Blast Off is our first spell, and I don't actually have a tier for this. Add a row below. Nope. F. And that's where we put Blast Off. We're off to a great start, aren't we, team? So Blast Off, for those unaware, does... let me find it. Right, so Blast Off, as you can see right here, it does 1,300 on a deferred dot that'll go off in 4 rounds, and it'll add 1 regular dot. So, it's, yeah... with Incendiate, this might be cool, but it's not without it. This is a thoroughly useless spell, and I would not recommend using this at all whatsoever. This almost got its own tier in in the AoE spells tier list, so that is Blast Off. Up next, we have Brimstone Revenant, and Brim does 470 fire damage and applies a 25% trap after. So I'll give it a B tier. It's a cheap spell that does pretty solid damage with a decent after effect. I like it. I think I'll leave it just in the B tier. For the next spell, we have Burnin' Rampage, and if I can just find that one here, I do have it, right? Here we go. Right. So Burnin' Rampage is, again, a deferred dot. It'll do 70 fire damage up front and 880 split across 2 deferred dots. It'll be 880 chromatic damage. So you can use this on any school, but I am pretty sure that it uses fire damage. So because of that, it's not really great on any other school other than fire. But again, with the whole deferred dot type deal going on, and especially since this one takes longer to go off than Blast Off does, I think I'm going to be putting this in the D tier. It's it's not as great, but credit where credit's due. It's a decent spell that that goes off later on that you don't have to use a shad on, so it's like, maybe you'll find a situation where this might be good, but at the moment, it's not good at all. So, yeah. Ifrit is up next. I'm going to put this in the A tier. Y'all can see here, 780 fire damage, and then it applies a 45% weakness. I think it's worthy of being in the A tier. That's just my opinion, though. For Firecat, I am going to put this in B tier. Like, call me crazy, but Firecat, I like Firecat. It's your OG spells of fire, and the bottom path, even though that's not really what we're deciding on, I can think of a use for the bottom path, so I guess I'll have the bottom path just sort of bump these up as we go. So Firecat is going to go in the B tier because it's a nice little detonate. It's a hit and detonate. You love to see that. So Firecat in B. Plus, it's a nice little spell just to start off the journey with. Fire Dragon, S tier, without a shadow of a doubt. This does mass, 540 up front and a 435 dot. This is the strongest out of all of the 7-pip area of effect spells. And although it doesn't do as much as some of the others do up front, it will still do like a lot just on the first round. So definitely an S tier spell right there. So Fire Dragon, definitely very, very good. For Fire Elf, I'll go ahead and put that in the B tier along with Firecat. It's just good. It'll Like, it does pretty solid damage for what it is. It's a 2-pip hit, and I like it. It's a real cheap damage over time. If I ever make another Fire Wizard and I'm taking it through the Crocus, this is definitely going to be a saving grace, because mobs are the first target love to shield, and having an overtime like this this early on is a boon, without a shadow of a doubt. So, Fire Elf, B tier. Fire from above, I'm going to put it in the D tier. I wish, because like they actually buffed this a little bit. Now it does 1425 split across 3 dots. That apparently lasts 6 rounds now instead of 5, and then it also just applies to traps. But this, it used to be like the pride and joy of Fire Wizards everywhere. It used to be so good, such a beloved spell, and now it's just it's chalked. It's kind of just over. So yeah, nobody really uses this in favor of S'more Machine, and yeah, it's not real hard to see why. I mean, it does do a lot of damage for what it is. You know, like it's split into 3 damage over time, so that's certainly good. But yeah, it's S'more Machine. Just it's this but better, because this does damage up front, whereas this is an overtime. And when this got changed from a straight damage spell into an overtime, tough. Just tough. For the next one, we've got Fire Gut. I'll go ahead and put that one in the C tier. It's good. You know, it's a good hit and shield. Could be useful in the first arc. I know Fire doesn't really have a lot of health or resist, so having something like this in like Marleybone or whatever, that could be pretty helpful. So I'll put it in the C tier. Hephaestus, this is Fire's only hidden bubble, and because it costs more than every other school's hidden bubble, I'm definitely putting it in the C tier. It is just not that great, but it is good at what it does. You can kind of use it as a hit to sort of augment, but yeah, C tier is where it's going to end up. Immolate, I'm putting this in the A tier. It might do a ton of damage to yourself, but getting Immolate, you know, like as early as you do, it's pretty good. Like, you'll be taking 200 damage, but you'll be dealing 600 for only 4 pips. I think that's pretty nuts. I have to say that much. Immolate is definitely a very strong spell right there. Inferno Salamander, this one also got recently changed in this most recent spring update. It now does 950 spread across to 5-round dots, as opposed to the singular protected 4-round dot that you see here. But just because it does so much for 6 pips, I'll put it in the B tier. Like, you usually won't see overtimes going up super high, but I'm going to put Inferno Salamander at the top half of the tiers here. It's certainly a very, very strong damage over time type hit, so I like it. It's pretty decent. For Fire's King Artorias, okay, so it hasn't actually changed. Honestly, I'll put it in the A tier, just because of the damage that it does. Because there have been strats where it's like Fire would hit on the 3rd round with just like a single hit, and since Rain of Fire, which you can see down here, is the 9-pip spell, people like Fire Wizards would have to just use their 8 pips, and King Art does more damage than Ifrit. So just because of, you know, strats like that against certain bosses, like Corporal Tennyson did this for a while, I'm going to be putting King Artorias in the A tier. The stun is nice as well, so kind of neat, even though it's not really useful just at all whatsoever. My beloved Krampus is up next. This one's an interesting one, because it puts a mantle on the target, and it's only 4 pips, and it actually does pretty good damage for those 4 pips. It's slightly less than Brimstone Revenant, but I do still like Krampus. I'm going to be putting it in the B tier. Link, Meteor Strike, this, I'll put it in the A tier, just because, you know, like Phantasmania exists. It's sort of the same deal with my AoE spells tier list that I made last week, where it's just better spells exist. So that's what I'm going to be doing with that. For Fire Beetle, or Nap the Scarab, I guess it's technically called. I mean, the overtime traps are good, but you would need to be like really going all in on an overtime strat to really make this good. So that's not really too viable in PvE or PvP for that matter. So I think that I'm gonna go ahead and put Nap the Scarab in the D tier. It's good at what it does, but what it does, just in essence, is not that great. Alright, Nautilus Unleashed is the next spell up. I'll go ahead and put it in the C tier, just because it'll steal the charm before it hits, which I think is an interesting little mechanic. Does it actually still work like that? Do I even have the spell? Let me see here. I may not. Okay, I don't actually have Nautilus. I don't think I ever bothered getting it, but yeah, okay, so it is still the same. So it'll steal a charm, and then it'll do its damage for the PvE path. The PvP path, it actually looks kind of interesting. Like it'll push a trap, and then it'll add the 700 to chromatic overtimes. But if we're talking strictly, you know, PvE, then Nautilus, I'm gonna go ahead and just put that in the C tier. It's a neat little hit just as you're leveling like through the first and maybe early second arc, but after you get Fire Dragon, there's kind of no use for it. So Raging Bull, I'll put that in the S tier. I'll be honest. It's another really solid AoE. It doesn't lose any enchant value to an overtime, and it just does a lot of damage, like 710 to 860. That is pretty solid, I will say that right now. And you know, blast off, I made a new tier for it, so this is the only shad spell that fires get that is really worth using, I would say. Like, S'more is good, but you know, Raging Bull. Raging Bull is it's the AoE, and with how PvE works, it's like that's sort of where we're at. So Raging Bull in the S tier. Rain of Fire. I'll put it in the D tier just because there's one or two, I guess, scenarios where it might be good, and even in the second Sunset it might be better. But for this, the only reason you'll ever use this is if you're against the Renegade Druid in the Catacombs. It's like, it's a boss where you need to just blade a bunch into a Rain of Fire, and like the overtime will just cook the minions and then cook the boss afterward, which is real good, but just in that scenario. So Rain of Fire is going to be in the D tier because that is the only time that it is ever useful, unless you're using like Incendiate with it. And speaking of Incendiate, Scald. I got a comment on the AoE tier list I think last night or a couple nights ago, and it was a guy saying, like, you know, they nerfed Incendiate, so Scald Incendiate is useless now, and I couldn't disagree more. Scald Incend, it's like they fixed how Incendiate works to the best of my knowledge. I haven't tested it, but even still, like 200% on detonated overtime, that is so good. So the Scald is going to remain in the S tier for that much. For Scion of Fire, I think I'm going to put Scion of Fire, I'll put it in the A tier, honestly, because it's one of those where you can like elemental trap, you could fuel twice, and it'll do real good damage. I honestly really liked using these the Scion spells as I was questing through Wallaru and fighting the Urk bosses, because if you're ever in a fight where, you know, you're against like an Urk, for example, where it's just one-on-one, like using the Scion spell is advisable. And I mean, I could make a whole video talking about how PvE could be changed to really incorporate these spells better, but Scion of Fire, I think, is going to go in the A tier just because it is Fire's strongest, like, single hit type spell. Because, like, 1,120 is already a lot, but then it doubles to, you know, 2,240 if there are 6 traps on. And because Fire, you know, Fire has fuel, it is so easy to set that up. So would recommend Scion of Fire just as you're questing, and if you're going against like just one mob or one boss in an instance. So would recommend Scion of Fire. Scorching Scimitars, C tier. Yeah, 4-pip shad. It's nice, but you know, S'more, which I'm going to be putting in the B tier, it's just like S'more, with how PvE works and how you stack buffs, it's a good chance you're going to have the pips for S'more. It's like Scorching Scimitars is only good if you just have 4 pips. And yeah, usually you're going to have 5 or more. So S'more Machine is going to outclass Scorching Scimitar in that regard. So S'more, you know, it's a really good spell. Hits pretty hard. But it's not an AoE because of how PvE works. It's going to be in the B tier, but it is definitely Fire's best non-AoE shad. Would recommend. Sunbird is honestly kind of strong for early on, so I'm going to put this in the B tier, just because it's like as you're questing, it really does do a lot. So would recommend for any fire wizards going through, you know, like Crocotopia, Marleybone, like it's a staple for those worlds. 10 out of 10. Would recommend, even though you get Immolate, I think, toward the end of Croc. So, oh well, you know, Sunbird is it's still good. You can obviously combo Fire Elf into Sunbird if you set up your buffs right in the early game. So, yeah, Sunbird is going to go in the B tier. Sun Serpent is... I'll put Sun Serpent in the A tier. I almost put it in S, but it just comes up a little bit short there. Sun Serpent, I mean, I like this because it does like its big hit, and then it does its little hit afterward, which can... It's like Sun Serpent is the perfect boss killing spell. It's like no other spell is like this, where it, you know, hammers the boss, and then it'll add like a cleanup hit and kill the minion with that same cleanup hit. It's like this, it's feint friendly, so it's really, really good. And with how these spells are now available, like at level 80, you know, it's like you could train this at level 80 and use it in Azteca now, which is so good, because it's like before it was a real problem, but because Azteca bosses just have so much health. But Sun Serpent is the answer to that. It just does so much damage to like a single target, and then it'll add that little cleanup hit on the back end. So really love this spell. Like, I cannot praise it enough. I'll be so honest. Next on the list is Elephant, which I think I'll put in the B tier. It's a good hit for like when you get it, but you know, Dragon comes in, you know, 6 levels later, so kind of, you know, make of that what you will. For Power Link, this is just Link but better. And I mean, I already just glossed over Link entirely, and Power Link just costs more pips. So yeah, I really just don't see myself ever using this. It could be cool in like PvP with either of these to set up a gambit with, but problem is both the damage over time and heal over time, like they don't last very long at all. It's like these are, you know something, I'm actually going to put Link in D tier. Like base Link, I'm going to put in D tier because it's really good against the I can't even speak English, chat. It's good against the Invader Fleet bosses in Novus at the end of the Wallaru storyline, but yeah, that's really about it. So, and Power Link costs more, so it's going to end up in the F tier, while regular Link has its one use. So yeah, that's just how I'm going to go about doing that. Phoenix, I'll put Phoenix in the C tier because it's like it's good while you have it, but Immolate does more. So it's like if you're a fire wizard and you can handle taking a little bit of damage to yourself, this is just gonna outclass Phoenix. So yeah, it even costs like a pip less. So Immolate over Phoenix easily. So Phoenix, it still does like pretty good damage, but I'm gonna be putting it in the C tier. So that's how it goes. I added Heckhound in here twice. So Heckhound, it's honestly a really, really strong dot spell. Like, it's like people used to use this against the Storm Titan back before all the nerfs, and I mean, for good reason. Look at how much damage that does. Like, it really does a lot of damage, and I like it. I'll put it in the B tier just because of that. Backdraft, this is one of the util spells that I added. This is going in S just because it does, like, it can help so much with dealing mass amounts of damage. This is good pretty much wherever traps are allowed. It's like having multiple fires is just, like, in a lot of cases the best way to go about beating bosses, so would recommend that. Detonate, I don't know. I'll put this in the B tier next to Heckhound. Just because it's like the general idea of being able to just blow up in overtime is just so good. It's just you get it real late, and I don't know, man. Maybe it's like a strat, like a whole strat could be to use like Fire Dragon or even Rain of Fire to do just absolutely mass on the first hit and then detonate it after. But it's like at that point you would just want to kill immediately with Fire Dragon. So I don't know, maybe I'm just waffling. Fuel is a B tier spell. That's where I'll put it. I know B tier's getting kind of full, but Fuel is going to be where I put the B tier. Say that backwards, but yeah, 30% to the next 3 fire spells. I like that. Kind of outclasses Nap the Scarab, because Nap the Scarab adds the 30% overtime traps, whereas this adds just overall fire traps, so I like it. Feels good, so yeah, Fuel will go in the B tier. Glimpse of Infinity. For the top path, I will put this in the B tier, just because this, it's like I had a whole strat in the Nightmare actually that used this. But does Heckhound outclass it? Hold on. I need to do math. Okay, team, a bit of math later, and I find out that Glimpse of Infinity's top path, which, let me actually see here. Glimpse of Infinity. Yeah. Using this top path here with Incendiate is nuts. Because, I mean, look at that. Like, 970 damage. Split across 2 overtimes, of course, but you get the idea. This does just absolutely mass. And yeah, I mean, there's not really much else to explain here. Like, Glimpse, it just does nuts amounts of damage for only 5 pips. So yeah, if you've got Incendiate, this is just like by far the best way to take out a single target. So Glincendiate. Glincendiate, definitely the move against like Ramacroc and Malice, but not the Ditcher Dragon, because I know that guy shifts it. So anyway, Phantasmania, I'll put this in the S tier just because, you know, it's a better first round AoE hit. So that one's pretty self-explanatory, I would think. And then for the last spell on our list, because I have Heckhound in here twice, we have Whiteheart Fire, and I'll be putting this in the D tier. Honestly, it's really just not that good. It's like they tried to emulate the whole Berry Surprise thing with this, but it's just not that. It heals for a good amount, but it just costs too many pips to really be good at what it does. So D tier is where it will end up. So that is going to wrap up my fire spells tier list. There's a lot of like random utility spells in here, like I could throw in the Roshams, I could throw in Mega Tranquilize, I could throw in the Elemental, but overall, you know, we've covered all the relevant ones. So yeah, that is going to be where the video ends. So thank y'all for watching. I've been Ice Gold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. Samuel Ghost is still here. Interesting. And my Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more. And I will see y'all later.